Welcome to Mexico City. If you have just started planning your trip to Mexico, I'm envious. Let me tell you why there are so many reasons to visit Mexico City. If you find delving into history intriguing, Mexico City has lots of it about. Retrace the footsteps of great artists, great thinkers, and revolutionaries. Be swept up in the charming cafes and architecture. Experience the deep, enchanting, playful Mexican culture, or indulge in some of the things that make Mexico City one of the best modern cities in the world. The food, shopping, sports, arts, and entertainment. We will be jam-packing this travel guide with a deep dive into the Mexica Azteca roots of this magnificent city. Check out part 2, where we'll visit the castle museums, enjoy the phenomenal food and drink, meander through the neighborhoods, share our picks of places to stay, and itinerary suggestions. Okay, we're gonna go back in time to get started. Knowing a little bit about the basic history of Mexico City will enrich your experience, so let's start from the city's beginning. Aztecs, as they are known today most commonly, is a term that was coined in 1810, so some 300 years after they actually lived and thrived in this area. They called themselves the Mexica, and will be using both terms. As you're going to see, their destiny collides with the Spanish in 1519. You may not think too often about the pre-colonial American continent. There were mighty empires going back nearly 4,000 years, including one city that was particularly notable because it was ingeniously constructed, connecting two islands in the middle of a lake, with canals and floating gardens, much like Venice to the far east, Tenochtitlan. The Mexica, or Aztecs, were here thriving in this spot, the Zocalo, which was the center of their city and is the center of the city today. Imagine vast modern-day Mexico City is built over islands in a lake. Let that sink in for a second. Oh yeah, and it's sinking. You can really see in this building that the left side is a lot higher than the right side. Sinking building. In the heart of the city, you will find the ancient ruins of the Templo Mayor, the center of the Mexica capital of Tenochtitlan. This is such an important place to begin our guide and a great place to begin your visit. We're over here tucked away on one side of the cathedral, which you see here behind me. And behind me, in an area that you can barely tell, is where we're heading to, the Templo Mayor. In the 1970s, 13 buildings were demolished right where we're standing in the hopes of finding some of the original ruins. Luckily, they were successful and uncovered treasures of the Mexica we can now all appreciate. Although there are various translations of the Mexica legend, the general gist is that their sun god told them to go forth and find a new place to live, which they would know they were there when they saw an eagle, in some versions devouring a snake, perched on top of a nopal cactus. According to them, they happened to find this exact scenario on an island in the Lake Texcoco. Tales of a rich, enchanting city lured the Spanish deep into the land we now call Mexico. Once they found the fabled city, they recounted that the stories were true. They wrote about the grandeur and the beauty they encountered, the floating gardens, zoo full of exotic animals, and the mind-baffling causeways connecting the island city to the mainland. Massive bridges, 10 horses wide and up to 6 miles long. The city itself was also a wonder. It had straight streets on a grid, organized into neighborhoods, which were then organized into municipalities, each with schools and shops. They had aqueducts that brought in clean water for washing and drinking. And what's more, they had clever systems to divert and prevent flooding when water levels rose. Daily life wasn't so bad either. They had tequila, chocolate, and coffee. They had sports games for entertainment, religion, taxes, and politics. At the center of the city was a massive central square. There were 3 great pyramids towering 60 meters high, which is about 14 stories. And that is where we are standing right now. When the Spanish first arrived in 1519, the city was so breathtakingly beautiful and they were in such awe that they initially schemed to capture it but keep it as it was and give it as a gift to King Charles I back home. But it's said that after witnessing a gruesome human sacrifice, the plan changed. Led by Hernan Cortez, they unceremoniously leveled the entire city to the ground, pyramids and all. Very hypocritically, I might add. The Spanish had massacred entire towns of people in their journey to reach Tenochtitlan. Cortez wanted to send a message. He wanted his fearsome reputation to arrive before he would. He also had a little trick up his sleeve. He was made aware of an ancient prophecy and used it to his advantage. In a nutshell, the prophecy told of the arrival of a white bearded man who could command massive beasts and had the ability to make and control lightning. Wildly conveniently, for the Spanish that is, this was foretold to occur in a particular year in their calendar system, which it happened to be. Human sacrifices were indeed an integral part of the life of the Mexica. They believed that humans came into being through the blood of the gods, and they believed that blood had to be repaid to keep the delicate balance. If they didn't, the sun would die. Imagine some of the sacrifices were actually volunteers, in some cases the winners of competitions, as it was considered a great honor. And it's not really that different from some of our religion's origin stories of sacrifice to pay for human sins. You've probably heard of Montezuma or Montezuma. He had a way of taking human sacrifice to a whole new level during his reign, which played a role in his demise. He had been dealt the unfortunate cards of being the ruler at the time of the fall of the mighty Mexica Empire to the Spaniards. But how was it that the Spanish were able to win with smaller numbers of soldiers and without the home field advantage? Of course, the factors were numerous, including the mind frame of Montezuma the ruler, because of the ancient fateful prophecy he feared so much. There were some other very interesting factors as well. For one, it helps to consider the difference in mindset towards war of the natives versus the Spanish. For the natives, in the ever-frequent battles against each other, the goal was less about killing each other in the battle, and the most celebrated warriors were those who could capture the most prisoners. Said prisoners were then executed as sacrifices, but still. Revenge. The Mexica were undoubtedly very bloodthirsty. Nearby villages once conquered were heavily taxed by the Mexica, and Mexica warriors routinely came back to these terrified villages and rounded up as many more people for sacrifice as they wanted, as often as they wanted. So it's pretty easy to imagine that there were some grudges. Cortez used this to his advantage and eventually joined forces with those seeking revenge, and this contributed greatly to the defeat of the Mexica. Of course, another crucial component to the Spaniards' eventual victory was disease. Smallpox never existed in the Americas before the explorers arrived, but once it began to break out, it decimated the local populations. It's almost inconceivable. Over the next 100 years, populations throughout the region fell from over 30 million people to estimates range from 1 to 3 million remaining. The Spanish destroyed the city, its records, its art, its gardens, people's homes and mansions. They reused the stones in their own projects. They demolished the Great Pyramids and replaced them with a cathedral. The Spaniards didn't understand the complexities and engineering of how to control the water levels in the lake. So to add insult to injury, they just emptied the lake. The life-giving water, which had aided in harvest, transportation, natural defense to name a few, was basically unappreciated. Today, a small area known as Xochimilco is an amazing place to see what's left of the lake and the floating gardens, and a really fun fiesta. History is definitely a mix of he said, she said. And we know that the conqueror or the victorious are the ones that get to tell and spin the tale the way they want to. So for over 500 years, the story has been, on the 8th of November, 1519, Cortez and his men crossed one of the magnificent causeways and entered the city of Tenochtitlan peacefully, received by the Emperor Montezuma. That's all fine and probably true. Where it gets complicated is that in the following 2 years, things went from peaceful to violent. Montezuma was killed. Spaniards say it was an accident. Hernan Cortez's version of events goes, we arrived, everything was easy peasy, they said, come on in, we think you are the chosen ones, we believe that your God has sent you, and then out of nowhere they just attacked us. We mentioned the factors probably included revenge, some betrayal, disease, but what we do know is that after several altercations, twists and turns and bloody battles, on August 13th, 1521, the Spanish claimed victory and took the city. They renamed it New Spain, or Nueva España. So the real problem with the narrative of the Spanish was that in order to justify the brutality, the killing, and the outright stealing land from other people, they said the people were just so grateful to see us. They were barely human, they were barbaric, they didn't have any education, they were little more than animals. This has had an impact on the way that history remembers Mexico to this day. Luckily, that's changing, and today there is a great interest in learning all about the people of the Mesoamerican region. Another piece of the ancient Mexica Empire here in this city is Chapultepec Park. This massive green space is twice as big as Central Park in New York City. The woodland was on the shores of the ancient Lake Texcoco and was used by the nobility and upper class of Tenochtitlan for hunting and retreats. Where the castle stands today was a former building used as a hunting lodge for noble Mexica. Several iterations, alterations, and renovations later, the castle is the only actual royal palace in all of the Americas. A great place to visit and an amazing view over the surrounding city. As you walk around Mexico City, keep an eye out for unusual features in buildings like lion head sculptures used as cornerstones, for example, as these are all pieces of ancient Tenochtitlan. All of this some 700 years ago, between 1300 and 1520. To put that into perspective in European history, that's considered the beginning of the Renaissance, essentially. The Mexica are only some of the most recent civilizations that dominated Mexico and Central America. The Olmecs go way back. The Mayans, Toltecs, and others that are now lost to us have left their mark on history with large pyramids and remnants of massive cities such as nearby Teotihuacan. 1500 years before the Olmecs of Mexico, Egypt became a unified empire, 750 years after Rome had its foundation. Of course, at 1 AD, you needed a new watch. Fun fact, Cambridge University is older than the Aztecs. 100 years before the Aztecs, Cambridge opened its doors to students. Europe crawled into the Renaissance. Columbus sailed the ocean blue, which led to the Spanish arrival in 1519. And another 300 years later, Mexico would be independent again. Isn't it wild to think that the Aztecs and Chaucer, the Medicis, and Leonardo da Vinci lived at the same time? This strikes an interest, I highly recommend taking a deeper dive. It's full of love triangles and plot twists. We have a comprehensive article over on salttravelco.com. Also linked other very valuable resources in the description below. We hope very much that you enjoyed learning about the Mexica roots, and we hope you'll watch our other video, which is more of a touristy guide to Mexico City, where we will visit Xochimilco, the pyramids of Teotihuacan, the different beautiful neighborhoods around Mexico City, enjoy street food as well as renowned fine dining, and we will go to some incredible heights. If you've enjoyed this content, please remember to subscribe. It's free and it helps our channel immensely. Thank you so much and happy travels.